Very good morning to you. I was thinking about you this morning, seeing as you're going to be out of work soon. What about taking on those embattled municipalities? Wouldn't that be fun?
Not for a year. I'm going to take a full year off just to fill the barrel of energy and then think about how I can contribute. I'm not sure I contribute best in the public sector, but certainly something that has business recognising that it has a role to play in the development of this country. That's fascinating for me.
Do you think, talking about the municipalities and what your angle is, I mean, is that an indicative of the problem of politics getting involved in areas possibly where they shouldn't? Is that something that holds back our country?
Yeah, I do think so. I think we have a too big a state involvement in our development and in the delivery of things to ordinary people. And when that delivery is challenged, what you find is there's a tension between business and the state, because we all, South Africans, would benefit from a working environment, whether that's working water, working electricity, working schools, working hospitals. And when they start to struggle, then it's a natural thing for individuals and for business people to say, hold on, what can we do to make a difference? And of course that challenges who has to do what. And I think we need to work through that as a country.
And how do we bring positivity back in the workspace, in our mental being, and in the business space?
No, as you and I were saying, the South African psyche tends to be very negative about our national narrative, but our national narrative has to be cherished. And I think we should owe ourselves an opportunity to step back and actually look at what has been achieved in this, for instance, even the last 3 years. If we'd sat here 3 years ago and you had said to me, so what should we see as the way signs of South Africa progressing in the right direction? I think we would have said, amongst other things, a competent head of the SARS, somebody we trust, a competent head of the National Prosecuting Authority, an independent Reserve Bank, a president who gets that growth is an important part of how we resolve our deep socioeconomic issues. And today we can tick very deeply each one of those things, and yet we still are struggling with the national narrative. And why are we struggling? Because we haven't yet made the crucial decisions about growth, the things that are actually going to progress this country. And so I think we have to sort of firstly insist that those decisions are made, and secondly support those decisions as they're being made. What can we do as business, as individuals, to make those real? And then I think we've got to take ownership of our own individual spaces and say, how do we make a difference? You've just had someone talking about how he's making a difference. And I think if we recognize that each of us doing things that propel and control our own space, as opposed to waiting for some rather large Titanic to move in the direction that we would want, I think we will feel a lot happier about what we do.
Okay, so I mean, I understand that we need to be positive. We have to get out of ourselves all the navel gazing. But how do you become positive when you hear Cyril Ramaphosa saying that now we have to really discuss what we're doing with our pension funds? This is hard-earned money. You and me, they're going to be taking these pension funds and they're going to be putting it in failed SOEs. I mean, they've failed in the past. Now they're playing with our money.
Yeah, but what's really behind that? What's behind that is a recognition that we actually have a problematic state-owned enterprise sector. So a better way to look at this, as opposed to just focusing on prescribed assets, which we should focus on. But we should actually also then say, what do we do about the state-owned enterprise? What are the right decisions to force? How do we all contribute into making those a better and more performing sector of delivery to ordinary people? So I'm much more in favour of sort of saying, yes, we tend to sort of be like a junior school soccer team. Everybody races off after the ball all together, all 20-something people on the field. We should in fact say, okay, there are a lot of things in play here, and how do we actually sequence them properly, argue about the right policy things, and then get the decisions made, because we're long on talk, very, very short on action.
But do you think it's something emotionally that they should just back off from? I mean, should South Africans see that, okay, there is a plan, there really is a plan, because we hear about plan. There really is a plan to save the SOEs before you touch something which is pretty sacrosanct?
Yes, I think that, I really think that prescribed assets is a seriously bad idea. We've been there as a country. I think it's a really bad idea. And I would far rather we focus on the things that actually are going wrong and we fix those than we start to put a whole lot of new, really expensive, really serious, consequential things on the table. NHI would be another example of something. Why start something before you've actually resolved some of the big issues on the table?
Yeah, and obviously nothing's going to work until you bring in trust, until you clean out those systems. I mean, how hard will that be?
It'll be hard, okay, but the good news is there is actually quite a lot of discussion between business and government, people really wanting to, and government at all levels, really wanting to collaborate, wanting to find solutions. But for me, the issue still remains that you can have lots of discussions. Make a decision and move towards executing that.
All right. How do we get more women in your sort of level of power? I mean, with you leaving now, there are no women in the top 40 companies listed on the JSE. And I know it's not just unique to South Africa.
Sure.
What's holding us back?
You know, I think there's sometimes a will and sometimes a lack of imagination about where skills are. If you look at the JSE today, 400 people, 52% female. My executive, 60% female. My board, the chairman is a woman. 60% of my board is female. My top executives, so finance, capital markets, post-trade, all our technical areas, women. So it's quite possible. We have incredible female skills here. But what's happened, I think, in our business is we've reached a tipping point. I think people have found that you can actually just be authentically you. Come to work, you don't have to man up to perform. And then we find ourselves in the lucky position of being able to really cherry-pick the top women that we would like in our areas. And so I suppose my reflection is that there are a lot of women out there. I think it's important that people open their horizon about where they source their skills from. And I think it's, frankly, incumbent on senior women in particular to lead by example and to pull up other women, to bring them into the workplace. And I think people will be amazingly surprised about what diversity around a boardroom table does to the creativity with which you look at a very complicated problem.
I can imagine. Nicky, thank you.
Pleasure.